too good, but it's far too good.
Oh, simply lovely that. But a great race. Comes really good. Fire. Well done. Really good execution. You managed that really well. So, very happy. Well done, guys. Well done, everyone.
What if I told you that Max Verstappen's victory in Las Vegas was so dominant, so technically perfect and so strategically calculated that Laurent Mekies ended the night in genuine shock after seeing what the RB21 achieved over 50 laps? You saw Verstappen win by more than 20 seconds, but you did not see what Red Bull discovered in the data. The team found that the RB21 entered a performance window they had not achieved all season long, a level of aerodynamic stability and tire behavior that even Mekies did not expect to appear at the most critical moment of the championship fight. And what Verstappen did on lap 1, exploiting Norris's mistake with perfect precision, combined with how he managed the tires, the fuel, and the pace while the rest of the field collapsed behind him, created a race so clean that Mekies described it internally as almost surreal. Stay right here, because once you understand why Verstappen's performance shocked Mekies, what Red Bull found inside the RB21 and how the radios reveal the true story of the race, you will see Las Vegas in a completely new way. The Las Vegas Grand Prix began under conditions that seemed designed to expose every weakness in every car on the grid, yet from the moment Max Verstappen launched off the line it was clear that he felt a level of confidence that had been completely absent during qualifying. The circuit was cold, the grip unpredictable and the tires needed careful management, but Verstappen sensed immediately that the RB21 was giving him a stable foundation. The opening corners revealed a car that rotated cleanly and responded without hesitation, a direct contrast to the instability he had fought the previous night. That immediate clarity allowed Verstappen to push with intent, establishing the tone for what would become one of the most controlled drives of the season. Behind him, the race began to unravel for the main contenders. Lando Norris attacked the first corner aggressively, trying to seize the lead, but he misjudged the braking point and ran off the ideal line. That single mistake changed the entire complexion of the race. It forced Norris into an early defensive posture and opened a window for Verstappen to dictate the pace without interference. Mercedes applied pressure on Norris soon after, forcing McLaren into a pit window that they had not planned for. This imbalance created a ripple effect that Verstappen capitalized on instinctively, pressing ahead while his rivals engaged in strategic battles that drained their momentum. The radio communications provided a revealing look at how the race evolved. While Verstappen delivered calm and precise feedback about tire behavior, grip and balance, Norris increasingly reported worsening traction and rising strategic stress. McLaren informed him that tire wear was climbing faster than expected, and that he needed to adjust his approach to preserve performance for later laps. Meanwhile, Red Bull told Verstappen that his pace was strong and his tire profile was stabilizing, a message that reinforced his confidence. The contrast in radio tone between the two drivers captured the widening performance gap lap by lap. As the first stint unfolded, Verstappen pushed the RB21 into a rhythm that the competition could not match. The tires warmed into their optimal operating window, the fuel load decreased enough to make the car more agile, and the surface began gaining a thin layer of rubber that improved overall grip. Verstappen recognized this shift immediately. He began extending the life of his tires with smooth inputs while maintaining lap times that others could not replicate even when pushing harder. His radio messages reflected a driver fully in sync with the car, noting strong rotation in the slow corners and stable traction in the exits. For the first time all weekend, every element of the RB21 aligned in his favor. The turning point in the race came when McLaren informed Norris that he needed to begin heavy fuel saving, a message that shocked even the commentators and became a critical internal moment. Norris was instructed to lift and coast extensively, a strategy that cost him time on every lap. Verstappen, who had been given more flexible fuel targets, used this opportunity to widen the gap rapidly. His engineer updated him with the situation, confirming that McLaren had entered a defensive mode far earlier than expected. This detail changed Verstappen's approach, allowing him to shift fully into race management mode rather than needing to push the limits of the RB21. By the later stages of the race, Verstappen was driving in complete command. The car maintained a predictable balance, the tires behaved exactly within their ideal temperature range and the fuel consumption aligned perfectly with Red Bull's expectations. Verstappen's radio messages became increasingly calm, confirming that he felt no immediate threats and that the RB21 was responding with stability rarely seen in such conditions. When he crossed the line with a margin of more than 20 seconds, it was the visible result of a performance that stunned the paddock. But the real impact would only be understood after the race, when Mekies reviewed the data and realized just how extraordinary Verstappen's control had been. The main issue Red Bull carried into the Las Vegas race was the uncertainty surrounding the RB21's behavior after its unstable performance in qualifying. The car had struggled with tire temperature, with inconsistent aerodynamic load and with a balance that refused to settle through the long, cold straights of the circuit. Verstappen had described a car that slid without warning and reacted unpredictably to every patch of water on the track. These weaknesses raised serious internal concerns. If the RB21 once again fell out of its narrow operating window during the race, Verstappen would be forced into a defensive drive and the team could lose significant points. This fear hovered over the garage as the formation lap began. The engineers entered the race with a detailed checklist, monitoring tire temperature curves, aero pressure values and balance indicators with extreme caution. Their priority was to determine whether the RB21 would repeat the instability of qualifying or shift toward a more forgiving behavior. During the opening laps, the data delivered contradictory signs. The tires warmed slightly faster than the night before, but the balance still looked fragile. The underfloor pressure built unevenly through the first few corners, and Verstappen reported minor instability under braking. Red Bull knew they had only a small window to stabilize the car before the pack compressed behind him and forced him into errors. What made this situation even more challenging was the strategic dynamic unfolding around Verstappen. McLaren and Mercedes were applying pressure through the first sector, and the team feared that any early instability would expose him to attacks. A single moment of hesitation could have shifted control to the cars behind. In this environment, the RB21 needed to behave consistently, but the risk of repeating its qualifying turbulence remained high. Verstappen had to navigate the opening phase with extraordinary sensitivity, feeling for grip and protecting the tires to prevent them from cooling on the straights. Every corner became a confirmation test for whether the race would stabilize or deteriorate. The true problem Red Bull faced was the sensitivity of the RB21 to the cold. The Las Vegas circuit created a thermal challenge that punished any car unable to maintain heat. During qualifying, the tires had remained below their ideal window, causing the aerodynamic platform to collapse repeatedly. The team feared that this same phenomenon would resurface during the race. The longer the tires stayed cold, the more the floor would struggle to generate consistent downforce. Verstappen had to manage this threat through smooth steering inputs and careful energy transfer into the tires. The risk was such that even minor mistakes could cause an immediate drop in stability. Adding to the complexity was the uncertainty surrounding track evolution. During qualifying, the surface had behaved unpredictably, shifting from grip to ice with no warning. Red Bull studied every lap of the support races to evaluate whether the surface had gained enough rubber to support consistent tire heating. But even with this data, the team could not predict how the cold desert air would affect the asphalt during long race stints. Verstappen entered the race knowing that the car's success depended on whether the surface could provide the minimum grip needed to ignite the tires. This made the early laps critical, as the team watched closely to see how the track would respond to full fuel loads. By the time the race reached its early phase, the problem became fully clear. Red Bull was not fighting rivals. They were fighting the conditions and the narrow limits of their own car. The RB21 could either rise into its operating window and become unstoppable, or it could fall beneath it and become unstable in every corner. Verstappen had to keep the car in that narrow line through instinct, precision, and constant adaptation. Mekies would later explain that this tension, the fear of the RB21 collapsing into the same instability of qualifying, was the foundation of the shock he felt when he saw what Verstappen managed to do next. Laurent Mekies began the post-race investigation by examining the tire behavior, and it was here that he encountered the first major surprise. The RB21's tires not only reached their optimal temperature window, they did so with unprecedented stability. Instead of fluctuating or falling as they had during qualifying, the temperatures held firm through every phase of the race. This consistent thermal performance allowed the aerodynamic platform to remain engaged and gave Verstappen a level of balance that the team had not seen all weekend. Mekies realized immediately that the heavy fuel load at the start and the gradual rubbering of the track had created a rare alignment of conditions that favored the RB21 completely. The aerodynamic data delivered the second shock. Mekies compared the race traces with the qualifying logs and found a stark contrast. During qualifying, the underfloor tunnels suffered from turbulent airflow, producing inconsistent downforce and forcing Verstappen to correct constantly. But in the race, the floor worked in near-perfect harmony, generating smooth, uninterrupted pressure that stabilized the entire chassis. The RB21 was producing downforce curves that were not only clean but almost ideal. Mekies noted that the car had never hit such a sustained aerodynamic rhythm in previous rounds, making this performance an outlier in the strongest sense. The car had become something entirely different from the unstable machine the night before. Verstappen's braking traces gave Mekies another reason to be astonished. Throughout the race, Verstappen braked later and harder than the competition, yet the RB21 remained perfectly stable. The data revealed minimal rear instability and almost no micro-locking events. This level of braking control is extremely difficult to achieve at a street circuit with variable grip, especially under the cold temperatures that defined the Las Vegas night. Mekies explained to Verstappen after the race that this stability came from a rare combination of tire temperature, aerodynamic sealing and fuel balance all lining up at the same time. It was a convergence that Red Bull's engineering simulations had considered extremely unlikely. Another layer of shock came from the car's performance during corner rotation. The RB21 responded sharply through slow and medium speed corners, delivering the kind of traction Verstappen uses to build large performance gaps. The radio messages during the race had hinted at this, with Verstappen reporting strong response and confident exits. But the data confirmed the magnitude of the improvement. The car held consistent rotation angles lap after lap, showing a level of mechanical and aerodynamic cooperation that Red Bull had struggled to unlock earlier in the season. Mekies highlighted that this mid-corner stability was one of the key reasons Verstappen managed to gap the field so quickly.